Okay.
Testing, testing, testing. Okay, great. Now it's coming through. All right. So yeah, joining you again from Ljubljana, Slovenia. I was not able to be on yesterday for the stream or the transmissions because I was finishing up another project here at in Ljubljana at the Kerstikoba Institute, doing an 9 hour long photo shoot for this project called Secular Fount, which is component of a bigger project that I'm doing. And so, yeah, that took up my streaming time yesterday, unfortunately. But today, so we have 2 more days here with this project in LabKill Lab. And so what I'm going to do today is talk to you a little bit about the radio and the radio aspects of this project, and talk to you about some of the components, some of the software that we're going to be using, and then I'm going to try and set up some transmissions. Yeah, we're going to see how this works. I'm going to be doing this from my apartment today, but tomorrow for the last day, I'm going to be able to do it crossing my fingers that the weather allows and everything. I'm going to be doing it from a rooftop here in Ljubljana, which may hopefully have a better chance of coating the globe radiophonically with transgender variants, genetic variants. Um, so, I've talked a little bit about the radio project in earlier streams that I've done this week, but maybe I'll just say a little bit more about it. This is sort of the second component of this project. The first was the genetic variants, and some of the research on that, and creating sort of poetic fragmentations. And I've almost completed that work, and we'll finish some of that up today. Um, and So that was really sort of eye-opening, especially with some of the research that I did this week on it. But then this part is about taking those genetic variants and some of the ways in which we can poetically engage with them, and then transmitting them in radiophonic space. Now, this has a few reasons of doing this. One, I'm really interested in this translation and transmutation of data into different forms, and specifically about, how can we, um, what happens when you do this kind of data translation? I mean, this is generally the problem of media, right? Not the media as like the news media or something, but media philosophically. This is the problem of how do you sort of mediate between one type of representation and another. And to me, this fascinates me because from the basis of sort of perception and our embodied experience, we are always already mediating, right? We don't experience unmediated photons or molecules in the air, pheromones that affect our olfactory system or taste or anything like that. It's always mediated, right? And so there's always a translation process going on. And if there's a translation process, it means that the translation can happen differently, right? To me, and thus to me, that opens up all sorts of possibilities, basically an infinite set of possibilities of what we could do. So for me, that's kind of one of the main aspects of this translation that I find quite interesting. But also, when it comes to radio, as I've mentioned a couple times before, radio is something that allows an infusion of a particular kind of space, right? Radiophonic space, Hertzian space, as Anthony Dunn called it a few decades ago. And Hertzian space is a kind of radiophonic space that has all sorts of different properties that depend on our physical environment. It depends on the spaces we live in, depends on how high you are. It depends on the sort of environment around you, how radiophonically loud or quiet it is, and then sort of geomagnetically, geomechanically, cosmically, it depends on the qualities of the Earth, of the Earth's atmosphere, how permeable it is to particular radio frequencies, but also it depends on the activity of the sun. It depends on the activity of Jupiter. Um, all of these things. So, like right now, we are in a period of relative solar quiet. The sun is not very active, and so it's actually much, much harder to transmit and receive on certain frequency bands because higher activity in the sun causes more, um, not so much disturbances, but more machinations, I guess, in the ionosphere, which helps ionize the ionosphere in particular ways, which then helps with signal propagation around the globe. Um, storms, ion storms on Jupiter can cause issues with radio transmission as well. So for me, there's this really interesting connection between radio as a tool, quote unquote, that we have developed that then interacts with all of these cosmic entities. And so I find that quite fascinating. Um, but then also there's this idea that, when you are transmitting, and especially if you're transmitting in an omnidirectional manner, all directions at once, you are then infusing this space with these radio waves, right? And thus, in a sense, we are all being infused by those radio waves. Um, and this happens, of course, all the time. Where if you're on a wireless connection, you're infused by the Wi-Fi signals of your router. You're infused by the signals of the cell phone towers, the FM radio, and so forth. And for the most part, all of this just passes right through us or is absorbed, in our surfaces of our skin, and no problems, right? I mean, this is some of the concern of the, you know, 5G bunch that's concerned about 5G technologies as some form of mind control or something like that. Um, but, you know, I think what's fascinating both is that concern, right? But then this finally this realization that yes, we are infused with these things. And that doesn't mean that we shouldn't use them or things of that nature, but just that I find it quite amazing that we are just constantly being both bombarded and infused, and these signals pass through us, and really, who knows how they affect us? I mean, from a scientific or medical perspective, it's really not a problem, but from sort of a deeper aesthetic, philosophical sense, I find it quite interesting and something that I think needs to be theorized a lot more. Um, so, so this means then, in a sense, when I'm transmitting these transmissions of transgender variants will then infuse, I don't want to say everyone around the earth, right? But some people. And this is one of those things that I mentioned, I think, in the stream on Thursday, I want to say, um, where after I had or maybe, yeah, Thursday, after I had the conversation on Wednesday, the Body as Trans Data session with um, Leah Imard and Emacat. Emacat had mentioned that one of her friends was really interested in getting infected by these radio waves that I'm going to be transmitting. So I think there's a really powerful narrative here about how, about infection, about sort of the fear of infection by queer bodies upon others, which of course goes back to the panic of the AIDS crisis. But this infection, as we were also talking in the body as trans data session, might be kind of really interesting insofar as what if we could imagine a world where people actually really want to become trans? Um, People really want to transform their bodies in the ways that we do. And of course, not just us, other people as well, but we were focusing on transgender people for that talk. So, for all these reasons, to me, radio is this fascinating medium to be working with. And I mean, just in general, also, I really sort of enjoy and I'm drawn to the aesthetics of it, the materiality of it, the antennas, the equipment, the building of it, but also, and as I mentioned before, the relative ease that one can do this. You know, um, unlike the internet, which requires so many layers in order to function, of different types of servers, of routers, of cables, of satellite links, of providers, and so forth. I mean, we saw earlier this week how huge parts of the internet became unresponsive because Google had a problem in its servers. So you just need sort of one problem and then poof, the internet stops, right? That's not the case with radio transmissions. Since it's more of a point-to-point protocol, you basically need the radio, an antenna, and then on the other end, an antenna and a radio, and that's it. And the antennas, especially within an amateur radio realm, run the gamut from full-on commercial rigs that are up on towers and masts and so forth to just a wire connected to a few components, circuit electrical components, and then connected to a radio. And to me, that's freedom in the lowercase f sort of way. Not freedom, but freedom, to explore and engage with this spectrum is quite, it's full of lots of possibilities for me. Let's just say that. So, it's not without cost. I'm going to talk a little bit about that today, but it's the abilities that you are granted by the equipment, the ability to sort of manipulate the radiophonic space with this equipment is sort of unparalleled to me, um, in terms of your ability to communicate around the globe. And by communicate, you mean this sort of relatively broadly, right? Not just communicate messages, semiotic messages, and so forth, but other sorts of indications, or as Felix Guattari might call them, enunciations. Okay, so I guess what I'm going to start doing here is start talking to you a little bit about the equipment. Let me actually just update the the status here and say we are going to be exploring radio transmissions. Great. Cool. So maybe let's just start. Just a second. Okay. So let's do. I know this is going to feel a little YouTube-like, but I don't think that's necessarily a problem. Let's talk a little bit about the types of equipment that I'm using here. So, if we're doing radio transmissions, then one of the most important things you need is a radio. So these, of course, can run the gamut from very simple things, just a few electrical components, to expensive, many tens of thousands of euro rigs. And, amateur radio is not necessarily a super cheap hobby, super cheap. practice, but it's something that you can get into it relatively cheaply, especially these days. There are some certain radios that you can get, which I will go to my bedroom and actually get you one of those right now to give you an idea of that. I'll just be right back. So this here looks like a walkie-talkie, and in a sense, it is a walkie-talkie, a very long antenna. Um, but this is a Baofeng UV5R, which has become sort of the gold standard of cheap uh, radio transmission transceiver devices. So transmitting and receiving. In the US, something like this cost the basic model costs about like $25, and gives you access to a huge part of the VHF and UHF band, which is more for short range communications than we're going to be thinking about today. You know, on the order of tens of miles to maybe if you're lucky a few hundred miles or kilometers, I guess you could say as well. Um, but that's also kind of amazing that something small like this can allow you to communicate over those distances. Um, this can also be used for receiving. So in the US, you know, you can use this to pick up different types of both um, sort of like weather radio, different types of airport communications, um, packets communications from pagers or something like that. And I will say the usual caveats when you're talking about radio stuff. You have to check your local laws to see what's legal or not, what's legal to listen in on. And I'm not a lawyer, yada, yada, yada. Um, so something like this is relatively inexpensive and certainly is a way in which a lot of people who begin doing amateur radio get into it. Okay. But that's only good for VHF and UHF bands. And to do stuff on shortwave, you need something a little different. And so what I'm going to be using here is this relatively older piece of equipment now called it's a Yaesu 817ND. Sorry, there's going to be a lot of names here just because I think it's kind of important to talk about the materiality of our equipment and everything. And this thing allows me to communicate not only on the VHF and UHF, but also on shortwave frequencies, which is what I'm going to be doing today. And so it's got all of the connections to different types of peripherals, which we're going to talk about a little bit, and the antenna connection as well. And so you can use this to do different types of voice communication, but also data communication, which is what we're going to be doing today. Um, then, and then there's of course all sorts of cables and everything, and I'm gonna do some setup with that in a bit. And then you can have, of course, all sorts of antennas. Um, everything from simple wires that you just hang up in a tree to somewhat more complicated things in the middle of the road. So I'll just show you the size of this bag here. Um, So this is a portable antenna, portable shortwave antenna. Fits in a bag like this, weighs like maybe 1.5 kilos or so. Um, and it's a multi-band antenna, which means it sort of has this little bit right here, which is kind of the most important part of things, which can then telescope to different sizes. Let me loosen this up. So you see there's a bunch of wire around there, and that's a coil that loops around this cylinder. And then this thing makes different connections with the coil as you extend it, which then changes the frequency response of this antenna. So since we're going to be working at 20 meters today, we're going to have it pretty far out. And this will basically get the antenna at a pretty close approximation of what we need to be transmitting. Actually, no, we're doing 20 meters today, not 40 meters, so it's going to be more down like this. Okay. And of course, there's lots of coaxial cable to connect this. There's all sorts of considerations with these antennas of having ground planes, which help with transmission and reception and everything like that as well. But I'm not going to talk too much about that right now. It gets into a little bit more of antenna theory than we necessarily need to do. So then as much as you have an antenna that kind of functions well at a particular frequency range, because it's very, very, very hard to design an antenna that works really well across lots of different frequency ranges. It's almost impossible, and that's sort of from the physics of how antennas function. Although the antenna that we're using for reception at C-Lab for this project is actually doing really, really well over a wide range of frequencies. But when you're transmitting, you need to have things tuned a little bit better. And so you can get things pretty close to correct with the antenna, but then oftentimes you need something like this, which is an antenna tuner. This is an auto tuner. So basically, this connects to the radio, connects to the antenna, and then basically I press a button on it, and it fine tunes the signal a little bit. Okay. And then the sort of final important piece of this, which is necessary for the transmissions, is an interface box between your laptop, your desktop, or what have you, your computer, and the radio. And so this then allows the computer to control the radio and thus send all sorts of digital signals, tune the radio, change its frequencies, change its way of transmitting, and so forth. So this comes in a little box like this. It's got different knobs on it for dealing with different, changing the, um, the basically the volume, the amplitude of the signal, and so forth. Um, so yeah, and this thing is basically a USB audio interface with maybe a little bit more um, components in it for dealing with the radio, and so it tends to be more expensive than perhaps it should be. Um, but that's what it is, and has quite a 1990s aesthetic. Um, one thing you'll note is if you go to amateur radio um, people's websites, they really look like they were designed most of the times in the 1990s. It's sort of GeoCities style, which is interesting. But I think that also says a lot about the types of people who are involved in this. Um, and that's also another reason why I am interested in doing this type of art project on amateur radio, which is to sort of open up the amateur radio space to more both artistic activity, but also different types of people, because it's skewed heavily male and um, not really, say, women or not really, say, queer friendly in a certain sense, at least not queer welcoming. And there are certainly women on amateur radio, but I've also heard lots of misogynistic things said about women by the men on amateur radio. And so that's another reason to do this, not only for the artistic aspect of things, but also just for the purpose of taking up some space within this space. So I think what I'm going to do now is put the stream on hold momentarily, or for a bit, maybe for 15 to 20 minutes, while I sort of set up all of this equipment here. And then I will come back and go through a little bit of the software and how we're going to use that software and misuse that software, I guess, for what we're doing. And then we'll start with some test transmissions. Um, Andrew and others at C Lab are ready and beginning, they're ready to start recording just in case this works. I'm not I'm not too um, positive that it's going to work, especially from the interior of my apartment. Excuse me. But I think there may be actually a more likelihood that it will work tomorrow when we're on the roof. At least it work in the sense that it's actually received by Taiwan. Um, but it will work in general in the sense of um, infusing the radiophonic space with these recognitions. That will happen no matter what, no matter whether or not it's received. And to me, that's also kind of interesting insofar as that allows for a certain type of indeterminacy. Um, okay, so I'm going to put the stream on hold while I get this physical equipment set up, and then we'll come back and work on the software. Okay, so I'm just going to change it um, to this screen, and then let me just update the ticker to let people know what we're doing today. Um, beginning radio fragmentations. Okay, let's get rid of that. Okay, great. So I'm gonna pause my mic and everything and get this set up. Okay, I'll be back in about 15 to 20 minutes. Okay, everyone. I have the equipment all set up. I can't really move the laptop webcam to show you, but most of the gear is over here. The three things that I showed you before: the radio, actually, the transceiver, the auto tuner, and the USB interface. And then over here is the antenna itself. Um, and I need to do a bit of configuration on this still. And then I'm going to finish some of the configuration of the software here. Um, and yeah, and I will do that. And then let me just see here. Is this actually changing? No. Okay, so I need to do a little bit of configuration with the software here. And so I'm going to do that now because I don't think it's necessarily the most interesting thing for you to watch. So I'm just going to turn that off, turn off my mic here, do some of that configuration, and then be back on again. So muting until I come back. I'm going to continue doing this.
Live streaming is on.
So I'm going to continue configuring some of the software here. And just to give you an idea here, let me actually switch to my desktop view. So I'm using this software FLDigi, and if you look up here, you'll be able to see the frequency changing on the radio as I'm going through some of the radio. I'm changing the frequency on the radio. You can't actually see me doing this because I don't have a separate camera on the radio and everything, but I can guarantee to you that I'm changing these things on the radio. So we've got the connection set up securely, seemingly working between the software, between the radio and the software FLDigi, which is an open source ham radio software with all sorts of digital modes. We may play around with PSK at some point here as part of the transmissions, but we're going to mess with that later. So what I'm going to do right now is I am going to then work on getting set up this other piece of software, which is called WSJT-X. I'll just open up the interface here. Maybe shut down FLDigi because I don't need that running right now. So let's let this load up. This is also free software. And don't know why this is taking so long to load up right now. Okay, there we go. Perfect, I think. Yes. So let me just go to the web here. So this is the WSJT software. And as you can see, we've already got some signals here coming in. And so this is receiving, theoretically, some FT8 signals, but we're going to have to go to the, so if we do this, we can change between the different bands. No, I need to set up the rig control in here as well. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to come back. So I'm going to pause the stream while I'm working on this, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to pause that. just wanted to come on stream momentarily to say that I'm still working on getting the WSJT-X software working. Seems like it's a little bit more complicated than the other software, or tricky. It's not working today as it was earlier when I was trying it. So I'm going to continue to debug this, and hopefully we'll be able to get it going momentarily. So I'm just going to mute my mic again. just wanted to come back on stream to say that I'm getting somewhere. So I have the WSGT software running here. I'm not really receiving many signals here, but I think it's because I don't have the antenna tuned properly, so I'm going to do that right now. But now I'm running into a weird situation where when I try and transmit, it shuts off my radio. So I'm going to have to try and fix this a bit, and also see if I can tune the antenna to what it should be. But as you see here, I am getting some signal. You should be able to maybe hear it a little bit, but let me try and tune the antenna and then come back to this. So I'm going to mute the stream again and come back, okay? So it's a good thing that I'm doing this right now and trying to get this to work rather than on the rooftop tomorrow. So I'll be back in just a moment. All right. Just wanted to give you an update here. Um, oh wow. Oh, I seem to get something. Okay. Let me just show you something here. This is unexpected. This happened. Let me go to my desktop here, and I'm going to go back here, and you'll see here that I just received a signal. All right. So I'm getting some stuff coming in from the radio on WSJTX. Not a lot, but I did receive um, one transmission from someone calling CQ. Um, so CQ is what you do to call basically calling all stations. That's basically what it stands for. Um, so yeah, that's kind of nice. I'm having a problem here where when I try and actually transmit, the entire sort of radio turns off. So um, what I would want to be testing to test this is to basically transmit this signal right here, CQ S5 stroke KC1 EKK. So KC1 EKK is my call sign. Um, since this is an American call sign because that's where I am legally um, uh, registered, I guess, for my amateur radio license. Um, but I can operate remotely using under some international agreements. And so when I do that, I have to add this S5 stroke in front of it in order to indicate that I'm operating from Slovenia. Now, so I would say that my call sign is S5 stroke KC1 EKK. So what I'm going to try here is I'm going to try the transmitting again. So basically this mode FT8 works in epochs or periods. So, for like 15 seconds, there's a transmission. Or maybe like, I think it's maybe 6 or 7 or 8 seconds. And then sort of a pause, and then another epoch. And everything is tied very, very, very closely to clocks and to timing, because basically to make this mode work, your time has to be basically almost perfectly aligned to the atomic clocks. So let me actually just set this back to what it should be here. And so, yeah. So it works in these epochs. So right now it's listening to things, it receives this stuff. So I can look up online who R1TM is. This is someone else who's calling CQ. So you often can just search up or yeah, look up their call sign in various databases. So this is someone who's who's based in Russia somewhere, who's calling CQ on WSJTX. But this transmitting is not going to work. So we're going to wait for this epoch. I'm going to press Enable TX for the next epoch, and we're going to see if my radio shuts off again, which it has been doing. So it's going to start transmitting. Yep, you can see it's doing that, and then it shuts off. And then I get this error. So this is not a problem I've had before when I've used this software. So I'm going to maybe try a couple of configuration settings here. So radio. Let me try doing mode none. Test cat. Okay, so that works. Test push to talk. Okay, I'm able to turn it on. Okay, we're gonna try enable TX. Nope, still shut down on me. Okay, this is decidedly frustrating. Um, because I'm able to turn on the push to talk, and it's showing good on everything. So that's fine. I had to take the antenna tuner out of the loop because the batteries in it seem to be dead. So that's unfortunate. We can try stuff with that tomorrow. Let me just try this. Okay, just push to talk. Turn off push to talk. Let's try enable TX. See if this changes things. This is unfortunately sometimes what you have to do. You just have to try things. Oh, darn it. Shut off again. Retry, file, settings, default, test cap, that works. So I actually use an 817, but for some reason it's got problems with the configuration. So we use the 857. Baud rates and everything should be fine. Push to talk works. I mean, this is a really, really weird error. I have never seen this sort of an error before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue working on this and yeah, see if I can get this figured out. And then within the next hour or so of the streaming. And if not, I'm going to work on this later today. And then so we're all ready for the transmissions tomorrow. Because yeah, this is an error. I'm looking at the radio here. This is an error that is a mighty weird one. So I'm going to put it back on the pause screen again and see if I can debug this. Okay, thanks. Thanks for bearing with me. This is the fun part of art with technology. It fails quite regularly. Okay, I'll be back in a bit. Okay, everyone. I'm gonna come back on screen here. So I think I figured out the problems almost. So let me just go to the software here, and then I'll show you this on OBS. Okay, so this is the software that I'm using, the WSJTX. We also have a waterfall here. And so, yeah, right now I'm just doing some receiving. I fixed some of the problems of it turning off the radio, strangely. Um, that seemed to have some issues with some Windows 10 settings. I thought I was having problems with transmitting at particular powers. I thought my um, rig was not able to transmit at its full power, which is 5 watts, but I don't think that's the case right now. Um, so right now I'm just trying to transmit these CQs. Transmitting an S5 KC1 EKK, S5 stroke KC1 EKK, and if I hit enable TX here, then the next epoch, it should start transmitting. Now the thing is when you're gonna see this go, you'll see is this change from receiving to transmitting. So this is what it's trying to transmit right now, but I'm not really getting any signal um, right here where I think I should be, and I'm not getting um, any signal um, on the radio. So I think there's something else going on here. And so even though it says it's transmitting, I don't think it actually is. Or if it is, it's not transmitting really anything other than dead air or something like that. So I'm going to continue looking at this for a little bit longer and then see if I can fix this on stream. And if I can't, then I'll fix it today and then get back to you. So yeah, let me try working on this a bit right now. Okay, just coming back on again. Let me make sure. Yep, I got some audio here. So it would seem that just because I'm not seeing, oops, let me get my hair out of this. Sorry about that. um, it would seem that I actually am transmitting, even if I don't see much of a deflection over here. So I think it's actually ready to go for tomorrow. Um, so yeah, this is quite nice. I'm quite happy that we were able to get this to work. It seems like it doesn't show the actual deflection on the rig here. Um, so yeah, I think we'll be good for tomorrow's transmission session. I mean, I was transmitting things here, but because of the um yeah, because of the issues with propagation in my apartment, which I think really absorbs pretty much all of the signals. Um, I was certainly not able to be heard, and I really can't hear a lot of stuff because if I had this in a different location, I'd certainly be able to pick up a lot of signals. I may try this later in a different part of the apartment and see if I get anything better. Mm, but certainly where it is right now, it doesn't really get much. So I think, yeah, I can just go back here to show you some of this stuff again with WSJTX. Um, yeah. Um, so yeah, we can try transmitting once more. I doubt I'm going to be picked up. I'm not being picked up on any of the standard sort of like reporting websites. Um, and again, I'm not really picking up any activity here. So I think my apartment is quite of a quiet zone for the radio for some reason. Um, so that's a bit unfortunate. But luckily, I have this other option and possibility to try transmitting tomorrow. So we'll have one shot. We'll see what we can do. Um, and so we'll try this tomorrow. I'm going to do some more work on this today and see what we can do. Um, so thank you, all of you, any of you who were listening or watching from the gallery today. Um, I can, since I'm probably not going to be able to be heard, I can try sending some things right now. Let me just disable that. And let me pull up the information here. And let's just say we're going to try and send this sequence. Oops, paste. Oops, why doesn't it allow me to paste that in? I guess I'll have to type this in by hand. So A-G-A-G-A-C-G-G-G-A-G-T-G. And then S5 stroke KC1 EKK. That may be too long, but S5 stroke KC1 EKK AGAGGACGGACGGAGTG. So one of the tricky things with this is that it's a very using this particular mode, FT8, you have a very small amount of data to work with, unfortunately. But we can try. Let's just try transmitting this in the next available epic. So we're going to receive here right now, and then we'll try transmitting in the next epic here. It seems to only want to transmit a very small amount of it. Huh. Okay, that's interesting. Huh. It'll allow me to type in as much as I want. Let me see if I can find out a little bit more. FT8 max length of Okay, 13 characters per message. Oh boy. Okay. So, 1, 2, 3. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Okay, yeah, this is going to take a while to transmit all of this. Oh man. Okay. Yeah, this is the problem with having these sorts of modes that are designed for just transmitting certain things. So, sure. Okay. So if we can only transmit 13 characters at a time, then we have to transmit our call sign. So let's just see if we can transmit the full sequence here of this variant while we're working on things. Okay. Then we wait an epic. The next three-letter sequence is AGG, which this actually kind of works because it means we're ascending by codon, which actually is kind of cool. Yeah. Although it all depends that, yeah, so we're transmitting in codons, but this may not be the codons of the actual gene that because of frame shifts and stuff like that. Then we do ACG, and then we do GGA, and GTG. Is that right? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, yeah, perfect. ACG. And then GGA. Will be the next one, and then the last one will be GTG. Last one will be GTG. And then once this is over, we'll transmit the name of the gene as well. And for that, we'll probably have to strip off the S5 strip of KC1EKK. But I think we can do that. And this is CDK12. Yeah, that's as much as we can send. Thing is that all of our every time you transmit, you always have to send using your call sign. And then we'll do one last transmission. So 73s is basically best regards, kind regards, signing off, etc., etc. Okay, great. So we at least transmitted a little bit today. It probably was not heard by anyone, but I was at least infused with these radio waves today. I'm transmitting at such low powers that I don't have to worry about being close to the antenna because it's like 2 meters away from me right now. Since I'm only transmitting at 5 watts, you wouldn't maybe want to touch the antenna while it's transmitting, even at 5 watts. Certainly once you get to higher powers, 100 watts, 1,000 watts especially, you don't want to be anywhere near those sorts of antennas because the thing with RF radiation that comes from antennas like this, when they're transmitting, you don't necessarily feel it on the surface of your skin, but it can cause deep RF burn. So it goes through the top layer of your skin and then burns some of the deep tissue. And that's actually really not a good thing at all. So you definitely don't want to be touching these antennas when they're transmitting. And you want to keep your distance. There's all sorts of formulas and everything for helping you understand how you need to keep your distance and how far you need to be away. For 5 watts and for the limited amount of time that I'm transmitting, this is okay. So yeah, I think I'm going to stop here today. I'm going to take, excuse me, sorry for that yawn. I'm going to take a screenshot of this window because I think that's interesting to see that we actually were able to get some transmissions of this. Let me maybe go to just a more basic, well, let's go to my PDFs. And let's sort of this, sort of that, sort of this. And yeah, this is actually good as a screenshot. So let me load up the snipping tool here. And then mode, I want full screen snip. Great. So this has everything. So let me save this in a day 5 or day 6 because we missed day 5 yesterday. Oops. Day 6. And we can put down here test fragmissions.png. And great. So yeah, I think what I'll do is I'll sign off for today. I'll do some more testing with this later on today. And yeah, then tomorrow will be the day for trying to do the transmissions and seeing if it will be received by Taiwan. But in general, then also just infusing the radiophonic space of the planets with these variants, transgender variants, and some modifications of it. We may try some other modes here that will allow me to transmit a little bit more data at once. So we'll take a look at this today and see what we can do tomorrow. So I think I'll stop there. Thanks for anyone who was listening or watching, either at C-Lab or remotely. And yeah, we'll have fun tomorrow. Okay, ciao for now.